that kind of self-reflexivity of the letters is one of the things that people find most engaging about them now. There's kind of a constant scrutiny of one's own emotions and behaviour, and this. I mean, I think you talked about Augustine, in a sense. The way that Seneca talks about the self is a big influence on particularly Latin Christian writers like Augustine and Tertullian too. That they really connect to Seneca in a way they don't to many other pagan writers.
I mean, I still feel a bit torn. I mean, I entirely take your point about, particularly the tragedies, and I've said that I've enjoyed the Apocryphal Quintessence. I still feel there's a bit of the early 20th century in me, which, isn't quite as keen on these self-help manuals and what I think is rather kind of fuzzy in parts Stoicism. But I have been really interested in following a bit of the ups and downs of his fortune, because one of the things we forget is that Seneca's Phaedra was, I think, the first ancient play to be staged after antiquity in the late 15th century. And we think of the staging a great tragedy, and when I was an undergraduate, I was taught that Seneca's plays were unactable. They were so rhetorical and static, and yet back there in Italy in the late 15th century, it was Seneca's Phaedra.
That's what they went for. Yeah,
that's what they went for.
Well, also, you might say it's fuzzy, but it's very interesting. Part of the popular dimension of Seneca's this day is that Stoicism has become. Precisely perhaps because of its fuzziness, but there is Stoic Day, there is Stoic Week, there is the consolation of philosophy. There is this sense that somehow maxims of Seneca are still widely sold as little self-help manual. And one can be very sceptical about sort of the theoretical or psychological underpinning of it all, but it is a fact. They appeal to this notion that you can find a dimension of inner peace and calm and virtue, even in the kind of life we work. Yeah. Now, a lot of us kind of don't buy into that. I don't. I prefer Thyestes any day to his maxim. But you can quite see that it is an appealing philosophy, perhaps not in such a different way from the way it could have looked to a Roman.
I think that's right, and I think that one of the things that comes across so strongly, particularly in the letters, is that sense of philosophy as practice, as kind of something that you do every day, and the kind of routines, the meditation on bad things that might happen to you and how you might cope with them, all those sorts of that sort of applied philosophy. And I think visualizing difficult situations and kind of inuring yourself to them, all these sorts of techniques. And it's absolutely true that Stoic philosophy has acquired a new popularity recently, and it's also been a huge influence on things like cognitive behavioural therapy. And the people, those who were at the start of cognitive behavioural therapy, had read a lot of Seneca and Epictetus, very interestingly.
You two are with the zeitgeist on
no,
Seneca.
we're not.
I know you are.
Not defending it.
If you're with the zeitgeist, I mean, Mary's after you, I can tell you.
But for me, there is nothing that will rescue Stoicism from being the rigid, fatalistic, narrow, in some ways very narrow doctrine that it is when you get to the real hardline Stoics. And the idea that somehow we can sugar the pill with a bit of self-help advice when you have basically, one of a really nasty philosophy.